Hello, horror fans, and welcome back to Dead by Daylight. Well, there have been some leaks that have occurred today, and actually, I've sort of heard that that is the reason that they released the information on the Nicolas Cage chapter coming out in Dead by Daylight. So, when I made that video on Nicolas Cage, I wasn't aware of this at the time, but now that it's come out, I wanted to go ahead and cover it. With that being said, we do have a trailer of the new chapter that's going to have both the killer and a survivor, and from what is seen in the trailer, it looks like also a new map. The new chapter is going to be called End Transmission. It is going to be for year 8 for the anniversary. I will say I'm a little bit sad because it is not a licensed chapter. So that's a bit unfortunate, but we will look at the trailer and then we'll talk about the killer and what goes on in the trailer a little bit afterwards. Before that, though, let's go ahead and go over what we can see in the roadmap for year 8 that was also leaked. So, as we can see, the next chapter is that End Transmission. Then in July, we have Tome 16, which will also release a chapter with a new survivor. My guess is that is when we will get Nicolas Cage. So, we will be getting him in July, not with the anniversary. Then in August, we will get another chapter that will have a new killer and a new survivor. Don't really know much about that at all. Then in October, we'll have Tome 17. And then in November, we will have a new chapter. But the thing to note here is it only lists it as a new killer. With that in mind, my guess would be that it is going to be a licensed chapter. Particularly since it's only a new killer, it really raises my hopes that it might be one of those killers that we really have been saying that we want quite badly in the game. The three that come to mind that we wouldn't really have a survivor come along in the game for would be Five Nights at Freddy, either Springtrap or Freddy Fazbear himself, maybe they could go with. I know a lot of people have been wanting a FNAF chapter, so really the survivor in there doesn't work too much, but having a new killer from it would be very doable. We could also possibly see the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers, because the survivors in that, you could argue from the first movie they would be possible, but considering the issues with the background of the people who created Jeepers Creepers, they may be just wanting to steer towards the brand new movie, and there you didn't see that great of a standout survivor. I'd say that one's the least likely. And then the one that personally I'm hopeful for, but I still think is very unlikely, is perhaps we finally will get Pennywise then. The reason for that is, yes, you could argue that the survivor for that could be Bill or Beverly or one of the characters from Stephen King's It when they are an adult, but realistically, the children version of them is the part that is most significant to the story and such, and Dead by Daylight just doesn't have children getting murdered in their game. So, could it be possible that we'll see Pennywise? I wouldn't bet on it, but there is that small hope. There's also the possibility, I'd say, as a fourth thought just came to mind, we might see Jason Voorhees. But again, there are survivors that would fit with Jason. Realistically, I would say the one that, if I was having to put money on it right now, that I would guess here would probably be the Five Nights at Freddy's. It makes sense for the game. A lot of people want it. And you could do multiple skins to allow people to play as the multiple different characters from the franchise. So I think it would just really work well for Dead by Daylight. And I'm happy with the fact that it looks like we are going to get a new killer that's sort of known. But as I said, that'll be in the future. After that, in January, we'll be getting a chapter that'll be released with Tome 18, which is a new survivor, which again will most likely be a licensed survivor. Now, is this going to be another star? Are we going to see, Johnny Depp now in Dead by Daylight? I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see what they do there. And then March, we will get a new killer and survivor. Then April will be Tome 19. It also lists the different in-game events going on, and then we have the gameplay improvement and quality of life improvements that they've listed for the year. Nothing there really stands out to me, and so overall, I guess it's an okay roadmap. The fact that all of this was leaked, I think, is one of the biggest issues because it really shows that they've got some significant problems going on at their studio right now. So not only do we have the leakers going on, not only do we have the fact that, the game has gotten a little bit stale, but we also have the problems in their own studio. I really do hope they can get these things straightened out so that the game can improve. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the trailer that was leaked for End Transmission.
It wasn't programmed to harm the crew. It was supposed to help us build a safer home, but something happened. It became self-aware. It has no empathy. It doesn't feel pain. It learns at an impossible rate, and it won't stop until we are dead. Or worse.
So with this, we see some really big changes for Dead by Daylight coming in this chapter. And while as I said, I am disappointed that it isn't a licensed chapter coming out for the anniversary, I will say I can definitely tell they've really put a lot of effort into what they're doing here. Noticeable things right off the bat are the fact that this killer and survivor and map are set in a very futuristic world. That's something entirely different than has been done in Dead by Daylight up to this point. So I'm really pleased with that overall. I think that that's a great change that's been needing to come. We've seen, almost medieval characters come out. We've seen sort of present day. This gives us that very futuristic type of feel to it. So I think it's a nice add-on to Dead by Daylight. I wouldn't say they should go this route too often, but occasionally like this, that's not a bad thing at all. The next thing is that it does not look at all like we are on Earth in this particular level here. Now, I mean, the argument could be made that we're in the entity's realm overall, but realistically, all the levels up to this point, with possibly the argument about the Garden of Joy, have all been very Earth-like. Nothing about the map here looks at all Earth-like. This is definitely a foreign planet, or at least things have drastically changed in the future where this planet exists. So I think that's something interesting that they're doing with this chapter. Could we see them explore this more in the future? It definitely opens up things for having the possibility of having the Xenomorph come out. Maybe that's something we will see in one of the other two licensed chapters that come out with both the Killer and Survivor. I think now we definitely have room set up so we could have the Xenomorph and we could have Ripley with the Xenomorph in the game. Because we could use a foreign planet, we could use a spaceship, we could use whatever it is that they decided to use as the location for it. I would say that one should be one of the two that has both the Survivor and a Killer to it, because, again, I think that's one of those that you have an established heroine in the series. That person should be there. You should not just put in the Killer without anybody. So I would hope they would go that route. But let's return to talking about End Transmission here. So, with this killer, we definitely see we have something that's inhuman again. They even talk about the fact that this is sort of an AI-based creature. I do like this because there was a time period where they said they were never going to go for anything that wasn't sort of human as a killer. They went away from that with the Demogorgon, and they have sort of steered away from it a couple different times with like the Dredge and such. But this one I do like because we've got sort of our first animatronic killer here. This definitely reminds me of some horror movies from the 90s and such. I think one of them was Virus. If you haven't seen it, was a reasonably good horror movie at the time. Probably hasn't aged well with special effects and stuff being considered. But it was an interesting story back then. That's where I really feel this comes in. But then we have that with this particular creature, it's sort of bioorganic. And it has, yes, it has metal structure and stuff, but it also has these organic parts to it. And here we see that it sort of shoots these pods off of it, it seems like. And then from these pods, it also fires off smaller pods, one of them attaching to the character there. then in this scene, we're actually able to see that another one of these pods turns into the creature itself. I think that with this, we could be seeing that this particular creature has both the ability to track a target, so it can put out. The way I'm looking at it, I would think that this might work in the game, is they might put out traps, sort of like the trapper, but that those traps in this particular case, instead of just stopping the survivor or whatnot, these traps might actually just attach to the survivor, something that they would have to get off of themselves. But while it's attached to the survivor, then it can go ahead and give the killer the survivor's location. And then additionally, the traps might be able to use also as sort of a teleport location where the killer can then go to. In a way, it's a lot like the Demogorgon's power was, and I mean, perhaps that is something they're using here. They might be repackaging what was the Demogorgon in a way with this killer. It would make sense since he's no longer in the game, though I do still have the deep hope that we might get the Stranger Things chapter back in the game. I personally missed the lab, and maybe that's one of those ones where when we have the killer alone coming later in the year, perhaps that is a Stranger Things chapter. You never know. But anyways, with this, I think you could use sort of the Demogorgon portal idea here and simply turn the portals into these, what do you want to call them here? Meat pods that are stuck to the trees and such. And when the survivor is near these meat pods, instead of just giving the survivor's location as they did with the portals, these sort of attach to the survivor and continue with them. And then same thing that the creature can use them sort of like the portals of the Demogorgon just to get to where the survivor is. I think this would be very useful in some ways. Questions with this are always going to be things like how fast do the portals work and such. Would this be something that you could use against looping, things of that nature? Could there be an iridescent add-on to it so that when these pods attach to a person, instead of giving a notification of where they are, they do damage to the person, something like that? There's a lot of interesting things that could be played with this. So, my overall thoughts on what we see in the trailer. I think that this is a very good step for Dead by Daylight to be taking. It's not the step I was hoping for the anniversary. I really was hoping for a licensed character in this particular case. But with that being said, I think that this is a much better step forward for the game than they have taken with some of their later chapters. In particular, the Skull Merchant to me felt like they really were sort of phoning it in. In my personal opinion, I felt like the Skull Merchant was a repackaging of a Predator license that for some reason fell through. I feel like they used pretty much everything they could have given a Predator character and just slapped the Skull Merchant label on it, and it just didn't come out good at all, I feel. So I really am hopeful for this chapter. I hope it does a lot better, and I'm hoping that it's really good for the game, because the game needs an injection of new life, and hopefully the Singularity might be that on the killer side. With that being said though, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. If you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and click that like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the chapter, click the bell icon, so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you. I hope to see you all again in the fog.
It became self-aware. It has no empathy. It doesn't feel pain. It learns at an impossible rate, and it won't stop until we are dead. Or worse.